Hello and good evening, friends. Good evening, leaders. My name is Coach Tia. I love giving communication tips and strategies to leaders to help them both personally and professionally. If you are new to my content, I focus on the inner dialogue. I love to walk you through the conversations that count, that help you to be a better communicator in your life, because I truly believe that if you know how to have the right conversation with yourself, then the conversation you have with others takes care of itself. So I do my best to encourage leaders on their faith journey to stay encouraged. That's the thing that we do here. We stay encouraged, and we have real dialogue, we have real talk, and we have some of the tough conversations within ourselves, and I love walking you through that. So thank you so much for joining. I will say that tonight, I believe, is going to be probably one of my most important broadcasts that I have ever done. So thank you for tuning in, and I would really appreciate it if you're watching live, if you can please share this. But this is for, this could be for you personally. I don't know what you're going through, but sometimes the holiday season can bring up a lot of despair. My last video, I did a video and some series on heartbreak and heartache, but I'm really wanting to coach people through these difficult times because, man, I think that this has been even just a tough time for me. This is the first time in my life where I've had some relatives that passed on, and this is my first holiday season without them, and I miss them greatly. So I think for the first time, I'm like connecting and understanding how they feel, and having those conversations with people whose families have changed, whose lives have changed, and they're processing the trauma. And I see now how sometimes the holiday season can bring that up. So if you have those people in your community, or maybe if you are one of them and you are trying to process just some of those hurt feelings, this broadcast is for you. If you know anyone that's dealing with depression, if you know anyone who's dealing with just some darkness, please tag them in. This is for them. I just want to encourage you all tonight on how to save a life. Now, I have to give you my disclaimer. This is a kingdom conversation. Those of you who are members of this kingdom, you know who you are. If you're not, you're more than welcome to join, because I still believe that I can truly encourage you anyhow. If you have questions about my faith, I love to share, so please feel free to inbox me. But again, my faith and my lessons all come from my faith that's rooted in Jesus Christ and his love. So I'm going to love you in that way, tonight especially. So anyway, thanks again for joining. Tonight we are talking about how to save a life. And I want to really kick it off with a really important Bible story. It's probably, I think that for the first time I'm seeing this story with new eyes. And in this particular story, this one is about, it is about Christ and his time right before he was about to be crucified. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's about to face the hardest time of his life, come morning. And one of the things he asked his friends to do, and he was really disappointed that they fell asleep. He's anxious. He's preparing to walk and be crucified, to die. And he asked them to stay with him and pray, and they couldn't. They fell asleep. So here's the lesson here that I want to bring up first. I'm not going to go deep into a Bible study. I'll let you read the story for yourself. But what's so important is understanding what it means to show up for people. And sometimes as leaders, we can be really quick to show up for people by wanting to solve their problem. Sometimes we can show up for people by wanting to immediately encourage people or give them advice immediately. They're sharing with you their pain, they're sharing with you their hurt, and you start advising them. And let me tell you, I have made this mistake before, where maybe you have someone that's going through a really dark time, they're in the moment. And, you want to keep giving them advice and advise them, and then they're not taking your advice, and then you're taking it personally, and then you're like, oh man, I don't even want to talk about this anymore because you're not even taking any of my advice. You don't want to solve this problem. I have to bring us to this point right here, because if you've ever been through this, where you are in the moment, you are in your darkest hour, you are in a state of trauma, you're trying to process what you're going through, you're trying to gather all your feelings, you're trying to gather all your emotions and all your thoughts, and people are always trying to push you out of it with advice. You're not always looking for advice. People are not always coming to you for advice. For Jesus in that moment, he's in the garden, he's not looking for advice on his purpose and his destiny. He just needed someone to be with him. Their presence alone would have been encouraging, just to say, you're with me in this moment. And I want us to learn how to sit with someone in their pain. Sometimes just being there is enough to make a person feel encouraged. Sometimes, listening is enough. Sometimes that alone is healing. Sometimes just saying, I understand what you've been through and I've been through the same thing can be enough. So one of the things that I think is so important that we learn how to do is sit with people in their dark hour. And that can be tough to do. It's very uncomfortable because you might feel like you're not doing anything. You may feel like you're not going anywhere. But I want you to consider how many lives we could have saved. I want you to consider how many people we have lost. People who have lost to suicide, people who have lost to depression, people who have embraced unhealthy habits, people who've lost their lives due to drug overdoses and substance use and abuse, and people who've lost their lives because they were victims of domestic violence and they found themselves in unhealthy situations because someone didn't know how to sit down and be with them. They felt alone, and so they rushed into a situation or an environment or a culture where they would feel less alone in that environment, or whatever the space turned out to be, a really unhealthy space. I think it is so important that we learn how to really be there for someone on the heart level, you know, not just the mind level, but the heart level. And if you can reach them in their heart, you know, before you're trying to touch their mind and every other place in their life, you may have solved 95% of the problem right there, just giving them the strength that they need to face some of the hard things that they have to do. That energy of being there, sitting with them in those spaces where they're dealing with that darkness and they're facing their pain and they're facing their trauma and they're living with it, and knowing that, hey, someone listened to me, someone cared enough about me to listen, someone cared enough about me to connect with me in this moment, someone cared enough about me just to be here. They didn't leave. You know, maybe they cried the whole time, maybe they're quiet the whole time, but your presence alone was comforting. You know, there's a song that one of the lyrics is, stay with me, your love is all I need. Sometimes just loving on a person is all they need in that moment. You know, we don't always have to be the advisors. We don't always have to be the bank for them. You don't always have to open up your pocketbook and rescue everyone. Sometimes you just gotta be there, and that is it. And there's a lot of times where people don't know how to be there for another person because they didn't have anyone to be there for them. And that's why we're having this conversation tonight. I want you to learn how to save a life. You know, there's another song that I love that song. It is called How to Save a Life. The lyrics are, where did I go wrong? I lost a friend. Somewhere along in the bitterness, I would have stayed up with you all night if I had known how to save a life. It's so important that we don't miss those moments where someone just needed you to stay up with them all night. You remember you were a teenager and you would stay up with a friend all night long and listen to them on the phone and just play music. And there's so many things that, you know, you have those moments to connect with the person when you're younger. And when you get older, you kind of lose sense of some of those connections to just talk and just be there, just for the fun of it, just because you're enjoying each other's company. It's so important that we learn how to do that for each other as adults, even as leaders. You know, you've got a million different roles. You may be parents, and you know, you may have these important job titles. You have all these things, but sometimes put all of that down, put all your titles aside, and just be with the person in their moment of despair. Your presence really, truly is healing. Be there with all the love in your heart. Be there without any judgment. Be there without, you know, being anxious to solve their problem. Be there without being anxious to speak up and try to interject your advice, you know, when they're trying to process their thoughts. There are so many lives we could have saved. So many people that we could have healed if we knew how to just be a beacon of love and energy. And so let's just progress the story a little bit. You know, in this story about Christ, you know, later on in this journey, you know, as the soldiers are approaching him to come and take him to go and to die, as he's being betrayed, his good friend Peter comes and he pulls out a sword and cuts the soldier's ear off, and Jesus corrects him and, you know, tells him, hey, look, you know, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword, picks up his ear and heals it, puts it back on him. We leaders often are so quick to be that. We're quick to be someone's soldier, but that's not what they need. You know, what he needed was someone to stay awake with him and pray while he was wrestling with his fears and wrestling with his mind and wrestling with his frustration for this world and having to face the greatest challenge of his life. You can't save people. Jesus did not need advice for how am I going to walk up to the cross? How can I avoid these soldiers? How can I get out of it? You know, he said it to his friend then, hey, if I wanted out of this, I could call on the heavens and they'd send a legion of angels to come and rescue me. He had to face this darkness. And there's some darknesses that the people, the loved ones in your life, they have to face. We're always trying to save people all the time. And sometimes our trauma is that there are someone who grew up in our life that we wanted to save that we couldn't. And so sometimes our leader and hero complex comes from, I couldn't save them, so let me try to save someone else. And then if that person's not taking your advice, you get frustrated, you lose patience with them, and then you give up on them or you bail on them or whatever the case may be. Well, they're just hard-headed. They have a process they have to go through. They have a purpose that they have to go through. They have a plan they have to go through. And yes, can they listen to you? There's a time and there's a process for these people to listen to you and hear you out and glean from your journey. But you got to build them up to that place yet by just first listening to them and hearing them and validating them and allowing your presence to be a warm light for them. So I want you to just learn how to sit with someone in that darkness for a little while. How many of us could have used that, you know, that time that we just needed someone to be there, just to be there, just to love on us, just to show us comfort, just to show us support. They didn't have to be our advisor. They didn't have to solve the problem. They didn't have to do it for you. They didn't have to pay the bill, but just knowing that someone is with you to help you to heal through your journey in the moment that you need encouragement so that you can face your own problems. That is so powerful. And I want you to learn how to be confident that your presence is enough so that you don't stress yourself out and so that you don't burn yourself out trying to be someone else's hero. Because oftentimes that happens to leaders. I found a lot of leaders, including myself, burned out and drained of resources because we're trying to put out all the fires around us, thinking that if I put out all these fires around on my kids and my family and all these other people and my friends, then it'll put my fire out too, right? And what that really is, my friends, is that is called an anxiety disorder. So sometimes we have to learn how to manage our own anxiety and manage our own pain and not allow someone else's trauma to reactivate our own. And a lot of times, if we're honest with ourselves, that can be our anxiousness with how we go in and we dive in and we start solving someone else's problem, not allowing them to have the character development in the moment that they had. Can you imagine if that's how that story had ended? You know, I'm giving you a Bible story of what is now the most popular man in all of the world for centuries. You know, his story continues to be told. And had the story ended with Jesus, with Peter rescuing him, it would never have been told. It would never have been so impactful without the cross. And so sometimes everyone has a cross that they have to carry. Everyone has a burden that they have to bear. And if you have the privilege and the opportunity of being in someone's life and they're hitting a moment of despair and they're hitting a moment of fear and they're hitting a moment of anxiety, your job then is to learn how to just be there for them. You know, be there for them. Don't force your advice down their throat. Don't force your encouragement. I've been in this position too before where people are pushing to encourage me to feel better. And you can't push someone into feeling better. You can't bully them out of feeling better by just having the right words, you know. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's silent and we're here and we're just offering a prayer to say, hey, I'm with you. I love you. I'm concerned about you. Are you okay? Do you need a listening ear? Can I just hold your hand? These are powerful moments and ways that you can touch someone without like literally burning your own house down or draining your bank account or expending all of your resources just to refuel someone else. So I want to ask you, you know, the question that you need to ask yourself is, are you uncomfortable with being there in someone else's pain and sitting them with the night and that nighttime, that darkness, because you haven't faced your own yet? And oftentimes that's the case. A lot of times we as leaders, we as problem solvers, do not give ourselves that opportunity to just sit in our own pain and process our own feelings. And if you allowed yourself that time and that space to say, how am I feeling right now with everything that I've been through, with everything I've lost, the things that I've had to recover, the relationships that have burned me? And if you are a leader, I know for a fact every leader I've been through has gone through some really extreme betrayal, especially the more successful you are, the far more betrayal you've gone through, the higher up you go, the more knives that were in your back in that process. You know, do you give yourself enough time to process that, how that felt? Every time you had to rise up and be the bigger person, every time you had to smile, even when you were in pain, even when you received tragic news and no one was going to show up for you or allow you to reschedule, and you just had to be strong in those moments. Do you give yourself enough time to process your own pain? And I promise you, if you give yourself that time in that space to process what you've been through, to process the hurt and the trauma that you've been through, then you'll be a much better leader. You'll be a better spouse. You'll be a better family member. You'll be a better friend, and every other role you have to play with helping other people through these pieces and sitting with them in their pain, and you can walk and navigate them through it as well. But I want you to be comfortable with knowing that your presence is enough. You do not have to be the bank. You don't have to I'm not against giving, guys. I'm not telling you not to give. I'm saying, you know, if you have it to give, that's a beautiful thing. But there are some times where that's not actually the solution. There's times that is not what someone needs you to do. And if you have come to the other side of life and you've lived long enough, you will see that sometimes we've given to people and snatch their ability and snatch from them the process for them to develop the character that they need to develop to become better people. And so they just become spoiled over time because they never learned how to solve their own problem. What they learned was how to complain and to be pacified. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that sometimes sometimes someone is complaining or someone is venting and someone is going through it, instead of pacifying them by just trying to rush in, and you're burning yourself and creating fire for yourself by putting their fire out. Find out what they actually need. And a lot of times what they just needed was a friend. What they needed was presence. And sometimes you're a friend in the moment. I can't tell you how many amazing people that God has blessed to come across me that just saw a look on my face. You're like, are you okay? And oh my gosh, you know, sometimes just people just to give you a hug. You know, He's sent a mother in the moment, a grandmother in the moment, a friend in the moment, a brother in the moment, a father in the moment. You know, sometimes it's short term, and I thank God for everyone that was there long term. But I just want you to take some time to understand deeply that there are layers of how to be there for someone. Everyone can't immediately take your advice. Everyone cannot immediately take your encouragement. Sometimes they just need the power of your presence first. They need the power of your listening ear first. They need just the comfort first, you know, that place to ground them. And once they grow into a state of confidence that someone was here for me, someone loves me in this moment. And I'm telling you, nothing builds confidence greater than love. Everyone who is confident, I'm telling you, everyone who's confident, they have a great foundation of love and support. So what I want you to do is learn how to be someone's loving support system, even if it's for an hour, even if it's for 30 minutes, that you're not so busy. When you see someone who's in despair, you have that friend that called and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't feel like hearing this again. This message is about how to save a life. And if you have those people in your life that you have lost, people who died too soon, people who died too sick, people who died and suffered abused, they needed people like that. They needed more presence, not advice, not advisors all the time. You know, and this is the holidays, guys. So this is a time where we've got all the wonderful soup kitchens and people are delivering meals and they're delivering gifts. This is not about being transactional. This message is about how to reach someone to the heart level and just to take a little time and to heal those cracks, those wounds that are in their heart. Because a lot of times the very first piece that isolates each of us when we have to go through something dark, the hardest part to get past is feeling like you're alone. And as a matter of fact, that's the reason why I do the content that I do, and I specialize in working with leaders, is because I've found them to oftentimes they have a very lonely road. You know, a lot of times leaders don't get the chance to have a lot of time with friends and family. And if they have family, they're disconnected from them and they don't relate to them very much because of the position that they have to play in everyone else's life. Because if you are a leader, You are rare in your community. And so you have to connect with other leaders, but those other leaders are serving their community. So the amount of time they get a chance to get together is rare. So I do my content because I don't want leaders to feel like they are alone in the problems that they have. So I try to work you through the inner dialogue, because you may not have enough people to talk to externally. So let me help you have the conversation internally. That is what this content is about. That's what this conversation is about. I don't want you to feel alone, and I want you to show other people how to not feel alone as well. And it's only going to make you better if you learn how to sit in your own pain too, and ask yourself the right questions to get yourself on that track of healing. You know, one of the questions that I like to ask myself is, what do I need emotionally that I have not been giving myself? That's a question you can ask when you sit in your pain. What do I need that I'm not giving myself? Sit with that. And you'll find, there's a lot of times we find ourselves, we get so busy and we get caught up, and we're serving everyone and we're doing everything, and we get into all the tasks, and we can neglect so much of our emotional wellness, our emotional health, and our mental health. And we have to ask ourselves those questions, because if you do not ask yourself that, then you're not going to know how to show up for someone else emotionally. I want you to take a look at the patterns of your life and your relationships. One of the pieces sometimes is that if you objectify yourself and you are always so logical all the time, or maybe you're always so spiritual all the time, you don't know how to connect emotionally with people, you don't understand their emotions. I'm telling you this as a guilty person who's been that. I was completely out of that space, and I've had to do a lot of work, still do a lot of work today, to get connected to the emotional side of myself. That is not natural for me. It is some work that I have to do, and I have to ask myself that question intentionally. And because I didn't pay a lot of attention to my own emotional wellness, I had struggled to pay attention to others' emotions as well. And so I had to do that work within myself to become a better mother, to become a better friend, to become a better leader, to become a better community advocate, to become a better communicator. And I work in communications. That is my life's work, you know. And so it made me better as a professional to learn how to be that kind of person who can ask myself, what do I need emotionally? And once I connect with that, then now look what unlocks and what is able to come out of me. Another question, what do I wish someone could do for me right now? And can I do that for myself? These are questions I'll ask, you know. I think that it's so important that we ask ourselves the right question to get connected with yourself. Because if you can do that, then you can learn how to save other lives. But you have to learn how to save your own first. I see too many leaders also gone too soon, neglecting their health, not eating the right things, being too busy, neglecting their wellness, neglecting their relationships, neglecting their connections, you know, isolating themselves from other people. It happens too much. It happens too much. So I'm telling you to really take the time and fill your cup. Process your pain. Process those things that hurt you, the people that betrayed you, the people that let you down. So that way, when someone comes to you and you see that person in despair and they're lost and they're hurt, you can now do much better to support them and sit with them in that darkness, sit with them in the night, sit with them, and so that they're not feeling alone, so that we can save lives better. It is that time of the year, friends, where people are struggling. It's that time of the year where people are reminiscent of their loved ones and those that they have lost and what the year has cost them. It is that time of the year where some people are on an all-time high, but there are a lot of people who are on an all-time low. And if you can learn how to save a life, if you can learn how to be there for a person just emotionally, you know, without trying to rush them out of their process for how they need to grow and how they need to heal and how they need to find love, just be the love in that moment. Just be it. Your presence can be enough. Not being cold, not, this is awkward. Just listen. Warm, with intention, letting them know that you care. And guess what? You might not even understand what they're saying, but sometimes understanding is very powerful, but sometimes it can get in the way. What matters in that moment is how they feel, not whether or not you understand it. You don't have to You don't have to approve of or disapprove of someone else's emotions, because that just makes it worse. If they talk to you and they're expressing to you how they feel and you disagree with it, when they're in a moment of despair, I'm just talking about the despair. I'm talking about hurt and pain. I'm not talking about someone who's just venting and they're just going off. I'm saying a person who's like dealing with sadness or dealing with depression or facing a tough time. You don't have to agree with them or disagree with how they feel to be there for them. And it may not be helpful for you to express that thought in that moment. You know, you have to graduate to those points to say, okay, you know, are you ready? Are you ready to discuss another perspective? Or can I present to you another perspective of this? And let me interject a point I'd like for you to consider that may help you to heal on your journey. There's ways that you can do that allow someone to consider what you're saying, but you first have to earn the right to hear from them. You have to earn the right to get to that point, to start to interject your opinion and interject your point of view, but by first making them feel as heard and safe as possible. So if you go there, then you can bring in your perspective. Then you can take it to the next level and start to give them advice, to say, well, this is what I observed, this is what I heard, you know, I hear what you're saying, and I can totally understand why from your perspective you feel that way. You know, maybe I can elevate your mind a little bit and show you some other sides of this that you can take into consideration. Take it or leave it. These are ways that you can now start to bring a person up from that despair. Then, once they can see, oh, you know what? Maybe I can see that point of view. Thanks for sharing that. Well, on that note, I'd love to give you some advice. I've been through this before. This has helped me. Maybe I can help you on that journey. So you see how we take it to the next level? Now we can start to give a little bit of advice to say, great, I've bought in. All right, now let's take it to the next level. Well, that is so great. Thank you for letting me give you that a bit of advice. I know for a fact that you got this. And I know for a fact, you see, now we're graduating to encouragement. You see what I'm saying? So first we go from listening, right? Just listening, buy in. Then we go to perspective. You had to buy into that. Then we go into advice. Buy into that. Then we go into, now I can encourage you, okay? Now I can say, I'm so glad that you just allowed me the opportunity to show you a different side. You are so smart, and I know you're going to work this out. I know for a fact that if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to come out of this. Then you can also bring in your help. Once they see it, now this is where you come in, leaders. This is where your help matters. This is when, before you rush in and you start throwing your dollars and all your resources trying to put somebody's fire out. Once you see that they have come with you up to the levels and you're like, you know what? You're right. I could have done X, Y, and Z different. You know what? Maybe that is something. Now you say, well, what kind of resources or what kind of support do you need? Now you can find out what kind of support they actually need. They may just say, well, you know what? If someone could just give me a ride. Well, you know what? If you already did what I needed. Then you start to throw in and support them with the resource and a tool. So you have to elevate to these points, but at least have the patience to walk with them on the journey from desperation to inspiration. But if you just try to put out their desperation with inspiration, you are going to completely and totally turn these people off. And that's how that happens. You lose them because they feel like you're out of touch. They think that you're disconnected from them. They think that you don't get it. You don't get it. And I'm sure you've heard that before. You just don't get what I'm going through. And a lot of times you do get it. It's just that you're on the other side of it, right? That happens all the time. So I just want to share with you the wisdom of how to get someone and have the patience to take someone on that journey to go from desperation to inspiration. But you have to buy into that system, and you have to have the patience to be there with them. And you may not be able to do it all in one session, right? If they are, let me tell you, I am saying this as the girliest of girls. My name is Tiara. I have the crownest on my head. I'm the pinkest of the girls. I'm not wearing pink right now, but that's me. I'm so girly, and I will cry in a second. Okay? If someone is just there with me, and they don't have to do anything. This is one thing I don't like, is for someone to solve my problem. I genuinely want to become better. You know, I'm not a person who needs to be encouraged necessarily. I want answers. That's me. And so when you're that kind of person, you got to find out what a person needs. And so you need to have enough patience. Don't just give them what you think or what you needed. You have to give them what they need in that moment, okay? And I'm telling you that because I've been there a lot, and it's a beautiful thing to offer someone what you have. But it's even better if you can have the emotional intelligence to say, what can I do for you in this moment? How can I be there for you? This is so important, guys. This is how we save lives. You know, you might keep them right there and they just needed you on that first level, and someone else might come and do the other few levels. But I'm telling you, if you have the privilege of walking someone through that journey and allowing God to use you in this beautiful way to bring someone from desperation to inspiration, then just take the time and have the patience, really, truly, to find out what they need, because this, I promise you, this is how we save lives. This is how we pull people out of the darkness. This is how we get someone out of depression. This is how we get someone, you know, where they don't need so many substances and all these other things to try and numb them and put them out of their misery, because they have love. It is love that heals people. And this is a season of love. This is a season of giving. So before you go broke and go bankrupt, maybe find ways to have conversations that matter, that's going to transform someone's life this holiday season. And you don't have to lead the conversation. You can listen. Listening is the greatest gift. It's the greatest gift, and it's the greatest privilege. It's the greatest honor that you can give someone. So I want to tell you that you are enough, because sometimes we rush to solve someone's problem because we may not trust that we are enough. Sometimes we have built our self-worth around the tasks that we can complete. Sometimes we build our self-worth around money and exterior things. You don't need that. You yourself are enough. Your presence is enough. I guarantee if you go and tell your spouse, like, you go spend some time with your spouse, just spend some time with them, like quality time. Listen, look them in the eyes, put the phone down, turn things off. And if you can dedicate 30 to 90 minutes a week doing just something like that, just think about how you'll start to turn a lot of your connections around, your relationships, your connections with your children. Listening, being there with people right where they are in that moment. It's the greatest honor you can give. So I want you to treasure that, and I want you to give the gift of your listening ear this season, listening with intention, making time, quality time for those connections. And if you have some important people in your life and you truly do not have enough time to dedicate to them to do this, I promise you got some things that are out of order, and you're prioritizing, you're idolizing something that is not as important as these people are. And what you don't want to happen is for these people to leave, fall off, cut you off, walk away, or get sick or die, or whatever the case may be, before you realize how important and precious that time is. I promise you that God has given you enough time for everyone that you are assigned to. First is your family. So we may need to check these systems that we have built. Your system, this system of this world, this life that you have created, this system outside is supposed to be supported by the infrastructure on the inside. It is not supposed to deplete your inner network just trying to pour outward. It's not supposed to go that way. What's happening out there supports what's happening in here. So please put your priorities in order. Get your houses in order. You cannot have generational wealth without family values. And you can't have family values. You can't spread family values without family time. Your generational wealth, I promise you, is 100% going to be built on the ability to honor one another with quality time of listening, giving, sharing, being there, being present, cultivating those connections. This is not only how we pull someone out of despair, but it's also how we prevent despair. It's how we prevent it. So even if we can talk about, like, how do we get someone out of the darkness? How do we keep them from going there to begin with? Because I guarantee you, if your children know for a fact that I can talk to my mom, I can talk to my dad, I can talk to my aunties, I can talk to my uncles, the wider this network gets, that there's people that they can go and talk to when they are going through it and they're trying to process the confusing things that are happening in the world. The better they're going to be, the safer they're going to feel, the more connected they are, the more confident they're going to be, the more successful they will be. So please cherish this, guys. We are who we are. All the information you have taken into your body, everything that you have learned, all the power that sits within you, you have it because there is something that you heard that transformed you from the inside out. So please make quality time. Take a look at how much time you're spending with the influencing the next generation, the one that you own. The rest of the world should not be influencing your children more than you are. And that only comes through time. It doesn't mean that you have to spend all day with your children, but make sure that the time you spend with them is impactful, that it is intentional. So let's prevent despair. Let's prevent desperation. Let's prevent all of these hurt and pains and trauma that children go through by at least making them feel, knowing that they're not alone. People, that's right there is the problem. That's where a lot of human trafficking comes in. That's where so much abuse comes in, is when someone thinks they can isolate you from your loved ones. And those people feel isolated first before they even go out there. So please do not isolate the people in your house. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're going to pay for it. Everyone is going to pay for it. So leaders, sit with your own pain. Listen to your own heart so that you are not neglecting yourself. Fill your cup. Have the proper conversation with yourself so that you can also start to gauge and have the right conversation with others. This video is getting really long, so I'm going to start to cut this short. But I want to say thank you so much for watching, guys. Please, 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 please. This holiday season, I've challenged you. Give the gift of listening, right? Taking someone from desperation to inspiration. We talked about that process. I love you. God loves you. Please, I hope you have happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, and I will talk to you soon in the next video. Thank you.